Most men don't expect their life to flip upside down at 60. They expect things to slow down, joints to ache, energy to fade, and attention to disappear. That's why what happened to Andy Wilkinson catches people completely off guard. He's 60 years old, a father, a grandfather, and when he walks down the street with his daughter, strangers don't think he's her dad. They assume he's her boyfriend, not once, not twice, regularly. And while that might sound flattering on the surface, it raises a much bigger question that hits every man watching this right in the chest. How is that even possible at 60? Because Andy doesn't look like someone desperately clinging to youth. He doesn't look inflated, artificial, or extreme. Looks calm, lean, grounded, strong in a way that feels earned, not forced. And that's exactly why his story matters. This isn't about chasing abs or impressing strangers. It's about what happens when you stop accepting decline as inevitable and start living by a different set of rules. Andy didn't wake up one day and decide to reinvent himself. His transformation wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, gradual, built day by day through choices that most people overlook because they aren't flashy. No miracle supplements, no brutal workouts, no punishment, just discipline applied intelligently over decades. And that's what separates his results from the endless before and after stories you scroll past every day. Andy's body didn't come from extremes. It came from consistency, and more importantly, from restraint. When people ask him about his secret, they expect something complicated, some hidden trick, a special routine. What they get instead is something far more uncomfortable. Responsibility. Andy will tell you straight up that you can't buy a strong body, you can't outsource it, you can't hack it. You earn it slowly through boring decisions made repeatedly, especially when no one is watching. That mindset alone already puts him ahead of 90% of people his age. But it goes deeper than mindset. It's about how he structures his life. Andy doesn't live in the gym, he doesn't chase exhaustion. He trains a few times a week, never more than an hour, focusing on strength that supports his joints, posture, and daily movement. He protects his recovery like it's part of the workout because it is. Sleep is non-negotiable, stress is managed deliberately, and food isn't entertainment, it's fuel. He eats simply, cleanly, and consistently, adjusting portions as his body changes instead of fighting biology. As he got older, he reduced carbohydrates, especially at night, not because carbs are evil, but because his body no longer needed the same volume. That level of self-awareness is rare. Most people either eat like they're 20 forever or swing to extreme restriction. Andy does neither. He listens, and listening is what keeps him lean without struggle. When you look at him, the first thing you notice isn't muscle, it's posture. He stands upright, relaxed, confident. His movement looks easy. That's the real giveaway of youth. Not size, not vascularity, ease, and that ease comes from a strong core, mobile joints, and a nervous system that isn't constantly fried from overtraining or stress. Andy avoids what most people chase. He doesn't train 7 days a week. He doesn't punish himself. He doesn't numb exhaustion with caffeine and sugar. He drinks water obsessively. He eats real food. He trains with intention, and he rests without guilt. That balance is why his skin looks better, his energy stays high, and his presence reads younger than his age. People don't mistake him for his daughter's boyfriend because he's trying to look young. They mistake him because he lives in a way that doesn't accelerate aging. That's the difference. Aging isn't just about years. It's about wear, stress wear, inflammation wear, overindulgence wear. Andy removed most of that friction from his life. And when you do that long enough, your body responds. The irony is that none of this is secret. We all know what works. Sleep, movement, nutrition, stress control, but knowing isn't the problem. Execution is. Andy executed for decades, quietly, without applause, and now at 60, the results speak so loudly that strangers comment on them. This story isn't meant to intimidate you, it's meant to challenge a belief. The belief that it's too late, that your best years are behind you, that decline is automatic. Andy proves that's not true. He didn't peak early and hold on. He improved steadily by removing what was aging him faster than time ever could. If you're watching this and thinking this only works for him, that's your mind protecting your comfort, because the truth is more confronting. His approach is available to almost anyone willing to stop negotiating with themselves. You don't need perfect genetics. You don't need perfect discipline. You need direction. And Andy had it. He decided that health wasn't optional. That strength was a responsibility. That aging well was something you actively practice, not something you hope for. That decision changed how he ate, how he trained, how he slept, and how he handled stress. And those changes compounded. That's why at 60, he doesn't look like he's trying to keep up. He looks like someone who never fell behind. What makes Andy's story even more powerful is what he doesn't do. He doesn't chase motivation. He doesn't rely on willpower. He built systems that make the right choice the default choice. That's the part most people miss when they try to copy someone like him. They focus on exercises or meals, but they ignore the structure underneath. Andy goes to bed early not because he's disciplined every night, but because his life is organized around protecting his energy. He eats clean not because he's constantly resisting temptation, but because his environment doesn't revolve around junk. He trains consistently not because he's fired up every day, but because training is simply part of who he is. That identity shift is everything. At some point, Andy stopped asking himself whether he felt like taking care of his body and started asking whether his actions matched the man he wanted to be. Once that line is crossed, the friction disappears. And that's why his approach lasts. When people hear that he trains only a few times a week, they assume he must be leaving results on the table. In reality, he's doing the opposite. He's extracting the maximum return from the minimum effective dose. His workouts are focused, controlled, and joint-friendly. He lifts with intent, not ego. He understands that muscle is the foundation of youth, but only when it's built without destroying the joints that support it. That's why he prioritizes his core, posture, and movement quality over chasing numbers. Strength for him is about longevity, not domination. Outside the gym, Andy stays active without calling it exercise. He walks, he moves, he plays. His body never fully cools down into stagnation, but it also never overheats into chronic fatigue. That middle ground is where resilience lives. And resilience is what keeps a 60-year-old man looking and moving decades younger. Stress management is another invisible pillar. Andy learned early that stress ages you faster than almost anything else. Not the dramatic kind, but the constant low-level tension people carry every day. The worrying, the rushing, the never switching off. He made a conscious effort to let go of what he couldn't control and stay present in what he could. That didn't make his life easier, but it made his body younger. Chronic stress inflames the system, disrupts sleep, wrecks hormones, and accelerates aging. Andy treated calm as a skill, and like any skill, he practiced it. Sleep became sacred. No late-night screens, no heavy meals before bed, a dark room, a consistent routine. That alone puts him ahead of most people half his age. When sleep improves, everything improves. Recovery improves, hormones stabilize, cravings drop, skin improves, energy rises. People underestimate how much youth is restored while you're unconscious. Andy never did. His nutrition reflects the same philosophy. Simple, repeatable, unemotional. He doesn't demonize food, but he respects timing and quantity. Breakfast is protein-focused, lunch is balanced, dinner is lighter, especially on carbohydrates. Treats aren't forbidden, they're controlled. That's why he doesn't binge. He doesn't feel deprived. He eats to support the life he wants, not to escape the one he has. Hydration is constant, 3 liters of water a day minimum, not because it's trendy, but because water affects everything from joint health to skin quality to cognitive function. Andy laughs when people talk about expensive creams and treatments. He knows that hydration does more for your appearance than most products ever will. When you combine hydration with clean eating and proper sleep, your body shows it. People see it before you say a word. That's why strangers react the way they do around him. Not because he's flashy, but because his presence feels different. There's a quiet confidence that comes from knowing your body works, from not negotiating with pain every morning, from trusting your strength. Andy didn't achieve that by accident. He earned it by removing excuses one by one. He didn't wait for a diagnosis to change. He didn't wait for a scare. He acted before things broke down. That's the part most people ignore until it's too late. Prevention isn't exciting, but it's powerful, and it compounds. Every year Andy invested in his health paid interest. Now he's living off that interest while others are paying debt. If you're in your 40s, 50s, or even 60s, this is the moment that matters. Not because you need to look like Andy, but because you need to decide what direction you're moving in. Aging will happen regardless. The question is whether you're accelerating it or slowing it down. Andy slowed it down by choosing discipline over comfort, consistency over intensity, and simplicity over noise. His story isn't about becoming exceptional, it's about removing what makes people average too early. When people mistake him for his daughter's boyfriend, it isn't because he hacked aging, it's because he refused to sabotage himself. And that's the most uncomfortable truth of all. Youth isn't something you lose suddenly. It's something you leak slowly through small decisions. Andy plugged the leaks, one habit at a time, and now at 60 the results are impossible to ignore.